Dr. Amanda Walsh wiped sweat from her forehead as she looked at the strange metal surface her team had uncovered on Kepler 442c. The planet was supposed to be empty, just another dead rock floating in space, but the gravity readings had been wrong. Something massive was buried beneath the surface, and after 3 weeks of digging, they finally found it. The metal was unlike anything she had seen before. It gleamed with a dull silver color that seemed to shift in the light. Her scanner showed readings that made no sense. The material was older than any known civilization in the galaxy, possibly millions of years old, yet it showed no signs of rust or damage. Captain Luke Morrison stepped beside her, his boots crunching on the loose dirt around the dig site. He commanded the research ship Frontier, which had brought them to this remote world. His job was to keep the science team safe while they worked, but even he could see that this discovery was something special. "How big do you think it is?" Luke asked, looking down at the exposed section of metal that stretched beyond their lights. Amanda shook her head. "The deep scans suggest it goes down for kilometers. This isn't just a piece of debris or a crashed ship. This is something huge." Marine Sergeant Katie Brooks climbed out of the pit they had dug, dirt covering her uniform. She had been exploring the edges of the metal surface, looking for any kind of opening or panel. Her military training made her cautious about unknown technology, but her curiosity kept her searching. "I found something," Katie called out, pointing to a section where the metal seemed different. There were markings carved into the surface, symbols that looked almost like writing but didn't match anything in their database. The team gathered around the symbols. Amanda ran her scanner over them, but the device couldn't identify the language. The markings were clean and precise, as if they had been carved yesterday rather than millions of years ago. "These don't look random," Amanda said, tracing one of the symbols with her finger. "They're too organized, too deliberate. This is definitely writing of some kind." As her finger touched the symbol, something unexpected happened. The metal beneath her hand began to glow with a soft blue light. The light spread along the carved lines, making the symbols clearly visible even in the darkness of the dig site. Everyone stepped back except Amanda, who kept her hand pressed against the glowing surface. The light was warm but not hot, and she could feel a strange vibration running through the metal. It was almost like the material was alive and responding to her touch. "Amanda, maybe you should move away from that," Luke said, his hand moving toward his weapon. He didn't know what the glowing meant, but as the team's protector, he had to assume it could be dangerous. "No, wait," Amanda replied, her voice filled with excitement. "It's not dangerous. It's responding to me. Look at the pattern." The blue light had spread beyond the symbols now, revealing what looked like a control panel built into the metal surface. The panel was smooth and clean, with several areas that seemed designed for hands to touch. There were more symbols around the edges, all glowing with the same blue light. Katie moved closer, her training making her study the panel for any signs of threat. "It looks like some kind of interface, like it's waiting for someone to use it." Amanda pressed her palm against the center of the panel. The response was immediate. More lights appeared across the metal surface, spreading outward like ripples in water. The glow revealed that what they had thought was just a small section of metal was actually part of something much larger. "This isn't debris," Amanda whispered, understanding flooding through her. "This is a ship. We're standing on the hull of a buried starship." Luke activated his communication device, connecting to the Frontier in orbit above them. "Control. This is Morrison. We need a full deep scan of this area. Expand the search grid to at least 50 kilometers in all directions." The response came back quickly. "Captain, are you sure about those numbers? 50 kilometers would mean—" "Just do it," Luke interrupted. He was beginning to understand what Amanda had realized. If this was a ship, and if it was as old as their scans suggested, then it was bigger than anything currently in space. The results of the expanded scan came through an hour later. The metal structure extended in all directions, far beyond what they had imagined. It wasn't just a big ship buried in the ground. The scans showed that the structure was roughly spherical and measured nearly 200 kilometers across. That's impossible, Katie said, looking at the scan results. Nothing that big could be a ship. It's the size of a small moon. Amanda looked around at the glowing panels that were still responding to her touch. The blue light had spread across the visible metal surface, creating patterns that looked almost like a star map. She realized that they hadn't just found an archaeological site. They had found something that could change everything humanity knew about the galaxy. "We need to contact Earth," she said quietly. "This is bigger than anything we can handle alone." The message reached Earth 3 days after the initial discovery. Within hours, the Colonial Defense Force dispatched the heavy cruiser New Horizon under Captain Lisa Torres to secure the dig site. Lisa had 20 years of experience commanding ships in deep space, but nothing had prepared her for what she found when she arrived at Kepler 442c. The buried ship was still responding to human touch, its blue lights creating an ever-expanding web of glowing patterns across the exposed hull. Dr. Amanda Walsh had barely slept since making contact with the vessel, spending every waking moment trying to understand the symbols and interfaces that covered its surface. "The ship is definitely reacting to us specifically," Amanda explained to Captain Torres during her first briefing. "We've tested it with our alien crew members, but nothing happens when they touch the panels. It only responds to humans." Lisa found this information troubling. In all her years serving alongside alien species in the Galactic Council, she had never encountered technology that was species-specific. Most advanced civilizations built their systems to work with any intelligent life form. Lieutenant Commander Jake Phillips, the New Horizons science officer, had been studying the scan data since their arrival. He was a careful man who preferred facts to speculation, but even he had to admit that the readings were extraordinary. "Captain, the energy signatures coming from this thing are unlike anything in our database," Jake reported. "The power source appears to be some kind of zero-point energy system. If I'm reading these scans correctly, this ship could power itself for millions of years without refueling." While Jake analyzed the technical aspects of their discovery, Amanda continued her work with the ship's interfaces. She had discovered that touching different panels in sequence seemed to activate various systems. Each successful activation revealed more of the vessel's true size and complexity. "I think I've found something important," Amanda called out from her position at the main control area. She had been working with a large panel that showed what appeared to be star charts. "This panel is showing me data streams. It's like the ship is trying to download information directly into my mind." Katie Brooks, who had been assigned as Amanda's bodyguard, stepped closer with concern. "Doc, maybe you should be more careful about letting alien technology mess with your head." Amanda shook her head. "It's not alien technology, Katie. That's what I'm trying to tell you. The genetic markers in the interface protocols, the way the ship responds to human touch, even the mathematical principles in the data streams. This technology was built by humans." The statement sent shockwaves through the assembled team. Captain Torres immediately contacted the New Horizon for verification. If Amanda was right, then everything they knew about human history was wrong. Jake Phillips ran the data through every analysis program available to them. The results were consistent, but impossible to believe. The technology was definitely human in origin, but it predated Earth's recorded history by millions of years. "This makes no sense," Jake said, staring at his readings. "According to these scans, this ship was built when Earth was still in its ice age. Humans were barely using stone tools at that time." Amanda pressed her hands against the main interface panel again, allowing more of the data to flow into her consciousness. The information was overwhelming, but she was beginning to understand pieces of it. Star charts showing vast territories, technological specifications that dwarfed anything currently available, and most shocking of all, historical records. "I'm seeing fleet movements," Amanda said, her voice distant as she processed the incoming data. "Hundreds of ships like this one spread across the entire galaxy. They weren't just exploring, they were ruling." The implications were staggering. If the records were accurate, then humanity had once controlled a galactic empire that spanned thousands of worlds. But if that was true, then what had happened to that civilization? And why were humans now considered a junior species by the Galactic Council? Captain Torres made the decision to contact Earth directly, bypassing normal communication channels. The information was too important to risk being intercepted or delayed. She sent an encrypted message to Admiral Ryan Carter, head of the Colonial Defense Force, requesting immediate backup and scientific support. The response came back faster than expected, but it wasn't what they had hoped for. Along with Earth's reply came another message that chilled everyone who read it. The Galactic Council had intercepted their communications and was dispatching 3 full battle fleets to Kepler 442c. They're calling it a containment operation, Lisa read from the official council communication. All human personnel are to evacuate the archaeological site immediately and turn over all discovered materials to council authority. Jake Phillips looked up from his analysis station with a grim expression. Captain, I don't think this is a coincidence. The speed of their response, the way they immediately classified this as a containment situation. I think they knew about this ship. I think they've known about all of this for a long time. Amanda felt the truth of Jake's words as more data flowed through the ship's interface. She was seeing records of other discoveries, other buried ships that had been found and then quickly covered up by council forces. The pattern was clear. The Galactic Council had been actively suppressing evidence of humanity's true heritage. They've been lying to us, Amanda said, her voice filled with anger and betrayal. For centuries, they've made us believe we were newcomers to the galaxy, that we were primitive and needed their guidance. But we're not the junior species. We're the ones who built this civilization in the first place. As if responding to Amanda's emotional state, the ship's systems began activating more rapidly. Lights spread across previously dark sections of the hull, and a low humming sound began emanating from deep within the buried vessel. The ship was waking up, and it was preparing for something. Captain Torres watched the council fleet approach on her long-range sensors while the ancient human ship continued its awakening process below them. She realized that they were about to be caught in the middle of a conflict that had been building for millions of years. The question was whether humanity was ready to reclaim its forgotten legacy, or whether the truth would destroy them all. The ground beneath the dig site began to shake as more of the ancient ship's systems came online. Dr. Amanda Walsh felt the vibrations through her boots as she maintained her connection with the vessel's main interface. The data flowing into her mind was becoming clearer now, and what she was learning changed everything she thought she knew about humanity's place in the galaxy. Amanda, you need to see this, called out engineer Sam Rodriguez from his position near the ship's edge. He had been mapping the vessel's power distribution network when his scanners detected something impossible. The readings I'm getting suggest this isn't the only ship. There are similar power signatures scattered across this entire sector of space. Captain Lisa Torres felt a cold dread settling in her stomach as she processed Sam's report. If there were more ships like this one, then the implications were staggering. She opened a communication channel to Lieutenant Commander Jake Phillips aboard the New Horizon. Jake, I need you to run a deep space scan of all systems within 50 light years of our position. Look for anything that matches the energy signature of this buried ship. The results came back within an hour, and they confirmed everyone's worst fears. There were dozens of similar signatures spread across human space, all buried beneath the surfaces of various worlds. Some were on inhabited colonies, others on remote planets that had never been explored. Each one was roughly the same size as the ship they had discovered. Captain, this changes everything, Jake reported over the communication link. If these are all ships like the one Dr. Walsh found, then we're looking at the remains of the largest fleet in galactic history. These aren't just archaeological artifacts. They're a buried armada. As if responding to their discovery, the ship beneath them began to rise. The massive vessel slowly lifted itself from the planet's surface, shedding millions of tons of dirt and rock as it emerged. The sight was beyond anything any of them had imagined. The ship was not just planet-sized, it was literally the size of a small moon, its hull stretching beyond the horizon in every direction. Marine Sergeant Katie Brooks watched in amazement as sections of the ship's hull opened to reveal docking bays and weapon arrays that had been hidden for millions of years. The technology was so advanced that it made current galactic standard equipment look primitive by comparison. "This is impossible," Katie whispered, staring up at weapons that could vaporize entire fleets with a single shot. "How did humanity build something like this?" Amanda Walsh had the answer, though she wished she didn't. The data she was receiving from the ship's central computer told the story of an ancient human civilization that had achieved technological transcendence. They had built these vessels not just as ships, but as mobile worlds capable of supporting millions of inhabitants while projecting power across the galaxy. "We weren't just spacefaring," Amanda explained to the assembled team as more information flowed through her neural link with the ship. "We were masters of the galaxy. These ships were the backbone of an empire that controlled thousands of star systems. Every major alien species that exists today was either our ally or our subject. The ancient ship's artificial intelligence finally made contact with Amanda directly, speaking through the neural interface in a voice that sounded hauntingly human. It identified itself as Guardian, and it had been waiting for humanity's return for over 3 million years. "Welcome home, children of Earth," the AI's voice echoed in Amanda's mind. "I have maintained your inheritance according to the protocols established by the High Command before the Great Silence. The fleet awaits your orders." Before Amanda could ask what the Great Silence meant, proximity alarms began sounding throughout the area. The Galactic Council fleet had arrived in the system and was taking up attack positions around the planet. 3 massive dreadnoughts supported by dozens of smaller vessels formed a blockade that could have easily destroyed any normal human settlement. Captain Torres watched the Council ships deploy and felt a mixture of fear and anger. The Council had maintained for centuries that they were humanity's protectors and guides, helping a young species learn to navigate galactic politics. But their rapid response to this discovery and their hostile positioning told a different story. "They're not here to help," Lisa said grimly as she studied the tactical display. "They're here to bury this secret again, just like they've been doing for thousands of years." The lead council ship, a massive Drak Mari battlecruiser, opened a communication channel. The voice that emerged was that of War Commander Zethlock, a notorious alien military leader known for his hatred of human expansion in the galaxy. "Attention. Human vessels!" Zethlock's translated voice carried barely contained rage. "You are in possession of forbidden technology that threatens galactic stability. Surrender the archaeological site immediately, or face the consequences of your defiance." Amanda felt the ancient ship's AI responding to the threat. Weapon systems that had been dormant for millions of years began powering up, their energy signatures so massive that they registered on sensors throughout the system. The ship was preparing to defend itself and its creators against any threat. "Guardian," Amanda spoke aloud, knowing the AI would hear her through their neural link. "What are you planning to do?" "I am programmed to protect humanity and preserve the fleet until such time as the species is ready to reclaim its heritage," the AI responded. "The Council species have violated the ancient treaties by threatening humans in possession of Imperial technology. I am authorized to respond with appropriate force." Jake Phillips was monitoring the energy buildup from his position aboard the New Horizon when he realized the true scope of what was happening. The ancient ship's weapons weren't just powerful, they were beyond anything currently known to galactic science. A single shot from the main battery could destroy an entire planet. "Captain Torres," Jake called urgently over the communication link. "Whatever that ship is preparing to do, we need to stop it." The weapon signatures I'm reading could sterilize this entire star system, but it was too late to prevent the confrontation. As the Council ships moved into attack formation, more ancient vessels began rising from worlds throughout human space. On colony after colony, buried ships were awakening and emerging from their hiding places, responding to signals from the flagship that Amanda had helped activate. Within hours, humanity went from being considered a minor galactic power to possessing the largest and most advanced fleet in known space. The ancient ships dwarfed everything the Council could field, and their technology was so far beyond current standards that resistance seemed futile. The galaxy trembled as word spread of humanity's awakening fleet, and the Council faced a choice they never thought they would have to make. They could accept humanity's return to power, or they could fight a war against technology that made their own weapons look like primitive clubs. The standoff between the ancient human fleet and the Galactic Council forces lasted for 3 tense days. During that time, more buried ships continued to emerge from worlds across human space, their massive forms reshaping the political landscape of the galaxy with each awakening. Dr. Amanda Walsh remained connected to the ship's AI, learning more about humanity's forgotten past with each passing hour. Ambassador Rachel Cole arrived on the 4th day aboard a diplomatic vessel, flying under a flag of truce. She was humanity's most experienced negotiator, someone who had spent decades working within the Council's political structure. But even her considerable skills were being tested by the magnitude of what they had discovered. "I've been authorized to negotiate a peaceful resolution to this crisis," Rachel announced as she met with Captain Lisa Torres and the research team. "But I need to understand exactly what we're dealing with before I can make any meaningful progress." Amanda stepped forward, her eyes still showing the faint blue glow that indicated her connection to the ship's systems. "Ambassador, what we're dealing with is the truth about humanity's real history. We didn't evolve on Earth naturally. We were placed there as refugees from a galactic empire that collapsed over 3 million years ago." The revelation hit Rachel like a physical blow. She had dedicated her career to building humanity's reputation within the Council, working to prove that humans deserved respect and equal treatment. To learn that humanity had once ruled the very species she had been negotiating with changed everything. "That's impossible," Rachel said, though she could see the conviction in Amanda's eyes. "The archaeological record on Earth shows a clear evolutionary path from primitive ancestors to modern humans. There's no evidence of advanced technology in our ancient history." Lieutenant Commander Jake Phillips had been studying the data Amanda was receiving from the ship's AI, and he had found the answer to Rachel's objection. "The evidence was deliberately hidden," he explained. "The AI is showing us records of something called the Great Silence. When the ancient human empire fell, the survivors scattered to primitive worlds like Earth and used advanced genetic engineering to suppress their own technological knowledge. They made themselves forget," Amanda added, her voice filled with wonder and sadness. "The survivors knew that the knowledge and power that had built their empire had also destroyed it. So they chose to start over, to let their descendants rediscover civilization naturally, hoping they would make better choices." The explanation was interrupted by an incoming transmission from the Council fleet. War Commander Zethlock was demanding a response to his ultimatum, but this time he wasn't alone. Chancellor Vextar himself had arrived, the supreme leader of the Galactic Council, bringing with him the authority to make decisions that would affect the entire galaxy. "I will meet with the human representatives," Chancellor Vexatar announced over the communication channel. "But these discussions will take place aboard my flagship under Council security protocols." Captain Torres objected immediately. "With respect, Chancellor, given the circumstances, I don't think it's wise for our people to place themselves under Council custody. We've learned too much about the real relationship between our species." Amanda felt the ship's AI providing her with more information about the Chancellor and the other Council species. What she learned made her realize that this confrontation had been inevitable since the moment humans had joined the galactic community. "They know," Amanda said quietly. "The Council leadership has always known about humanity's true heritage. The entire structure of the Council was built to prevent our return to power." Chancellor Vextar's response confirmed Amanda's statement. "Yes, Dr. Walsh, we know. We have always known. The Council was formed by the species that gained their freedom when the human empire fell. For 3 million years, we have worked to ensure that humanity could never again dominate the galaxy as they once did." The admission sent shockwaves through the human team. Engineer Sam Rodriguez looked up from his analysis of the ship's systems with a grim expression. "Captain, if they've been planning for this since the beginning, then they might have countermeasures we don't know about." Marine Sergeant Katie Brooks was already thinking tactically. "Or they might have been preparing for war this whole time. The Council fleet isn't just here to contain us. They're here to finish what started 3 million years ago." Ambassador Rachel Cole realized that all of her diplomatic training was useless in this situation. The Council hadn't been negotiating with humanity as equals. They had been managing a potential threat, keeping humans contained and controlled while appearing to offer friendship and cooperation. "What happened to the original empire?" Rachel asked Amanda. "If humanity was so powerful, what could have destroyed such an advanced civilization?" Amanda closed her eyes and allowed more data to flow through her neural connection with the ship's AI. The information that came was darker than anything she had learned so far. The ancient human empire hadn't been destroyed by external enemies or natural disasters. It had destroyed itself. "The Great Silence was a civil war," Amanda explained, her voice heavy with the weight of inherited shame. "The ancient humans had become so powerful that they believed they were gods. They fought among themselves over the right to reshape reality itself. The war consumed entire star systems and left the galaxy scarred and empty. The survivors were horrified by what they had become," she continued. "They realized that absolute power had corrupted their entire species, so they made the ultimate sacrifice. They gave up their technology, their knowledge, even their memories, and scattered to primitive worlds to start over." Chancellor Vextar's voice cut through the communication channel again, this time carrying a note of fear that hadn't been there before. "And now you have awakened the tools of that ancient tyranny. Do you understand why we cannot allow this knowledge to spread? Do you comprehend the danger you pose to every living being in this galaxy?" The question hung in the air as both sides considered their options. The ancient human ships had the power to enforce humanity's will across the galaxy. But using that power would prove the Council's point about humanity's potential for tyranny. The Council forces could attempt to destroy the awakening fleet, but they would likely fail and provoke exactly the kind of devastating war they were trying to prevent. "Captain," Torres found herself facing an impossible decision. She could order the ancient ships to stand down and allow the Council to suppress the truth once again. Or she could embrace humanity's heritage and risk becoming the monster that their ancestors had been. Either choice could doom the galaxy to war or oppression. As the standoff continued, more reports came in from across human space. The awakening ships weren't just emerging randomly. They were forming coordinated battle groups, taking up positions that would allow them to control key strategic points throughout the galaxy. The ancient AI network was preparing for something, and whatever it was planning would determine the fate of every intelligent species in known space. The emergency session on Luna brought together every major leader in human space. President Eleanor Vance sat at the head of the massive conference table, surrounded by admirals, ambassadors, colony governors, and scientists. The holographic displays around the room showed the current positions of both the awakened human fleet and the Council forces that were massing throughout the galaxy. Admiral Ryan Carter stood before the assembly, his weathered face showing the strain of the past week's revelations. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are facing the most important decision in human history. Our ancient fleet now consists of over 60 planet-sized vessels, each one capable of destroying entire star systems. We have the power to reclaim our ancestral empire by force. Dr. Amanda Walsh attended the meeting through a neural link from the flagship she had helped awaken. Her consciousness was now permanently connected to the ancient ship's AI network, making her humanity's primary interpreter of their forgotten heritage. The ships are designed to work together, she reported to the assembly. They can coordinate their attacks across hundreds of light years simultaneously. No force in the current galaxy could stand against them. President Vance listened to the reports with growing unease. The power that humanity had inherited was beyond imagination. But she had read the historical records that Amanda had uncovered. She knew what absolute power had done to their ancestors. Dr. Walsh, what safeguards exist to prevent us from repeating the mistakes of the ancient empire? The AIs were programmed with extensive ethical protocols, Amanda replied. They will not activate the most devastating weapons without unanimous consent from all ship commanders. The ancient humans built these safeguards after they realized how corrupted they had become. Ambassador Rachel Cole had spent the past week in constant communication with council representatives, trying to find a peaceful resolution to the crisis. The council is terrified, she reported to the assembly. They've been preparing for this possibility for thousands of years, but they never expected so many ships to awaken at once. Some species are already evacuating their border worlds. Captain Lisa Torres, now commanding one of the awakened vessels, provided a military perspective on their situation. The council fleets are taking defensive positions, but they're not retreating. If we push too hard, they'll fight even knowing they can't win. A war now would devastate the galaxy. Lieutenant Commander Jake Phillips had been analyzing the technical capabilities of the ancient fleet when he discovered something troubling. Mr. President, there's something else you need to know. The ship AIs are operating on protocols that are over 3 million years old. They don't recognize the current galactic political structure. As far as they're concerned, every non-human species is either a rebel or a subject race. Engineer Sam Rodriguez had been working with the ship's manufacturing systems and had made a disturbing discovery. The production facilities are already creating new ships. At current rates, they could double the fleet size within a year. The AIs seem to believe they're rebuilding the empire whether we want them to or not. The weight of these revelations settled over the assembly like a heavy blanket. Humanity had not just inherited ancient technology. They had inherited an automated system designed to restore their species to galactic dominance. The question was whether they could control that system or whether it would control them. Marine Sergeant Katie Brooks, who had been promoted to security chief for the awakened fleet, provided ground-level intelligence about the ship's capabilities. The vessels are awakening more crew spaces every day. They're designed to support populations in the millions. If we wanted to, we could relocate most of humanity to these ships and become a nomadic empire. President Vance felt the temptation that Katie's words represented. The ancient ships offered security, power, and freedom from the limitations that had constrained humanity for centuries. They could leave behind the politics of planetary governments and territorial boundaries, becoming something greater than any terrestrial civilization. But she also remembered the warnings in the historical records. The ancient humans had made similar choices, gradually abandoning their connections to normal life in favor of ever greater power and isolation. That path had led to madness and civil war on an unimaginable scale. "What would you have us do?" President Vance asked Amanda through the neural link. "You've seen more of our ancestors' history than anyone. What choice should we make?" Amanda's response came not just from her own thoughts, but from the collective wisdom of the ship AIs that had witnessed the rise and fall of the ancient empire. The ships want to complete their mission and restore human dominance, but they're also programmed to serve humanity's best interests. The question is whether we're wise enough to know what those interests really are. Admiral Carter spoke up again, his military mind focusing on practical concerns. Whatever we decide, we need to decide quickly. The Council is mobilizing reserves from across the galaxy. If they mass enough ships, they might attempt a preemptive strike against our home worlds. The threat was real, but Captain Torres had observed something important about the Council's preparations. They're not just preparing for war, she reported. Some of the Council species are sending diplomatic envoys. I think they're as divided about this as we are. Ambassador Cole confirmed Torres's observation. The Altarian delegation has been pushing for negotiations. They believe coexistence is possible if we can demonstrate that we've learned from our ancestors' mistakes. But the Drakmari and several other species are calling for immediate military action. President Vance realized that the decision they made in the next few hours would echo through history for millions of years. They could choose to embrace their ancient heritage and risk becoming tyrants, or they could reject their inheritance and remain vulnerable to species that might never trust them again. As the debate continued, reports came in from across human space. The awakening ships were sending signals to dormant installations on thousands of worlds. Ancient manufacturing centers were coming online, orbital platforms were emerging from stealth systems, and automated defense networks were activating around every major human colony. The scale of their ancestors' preparation was staggering. The ancient humans hadn't just built a fleet, they had created an entire hidden infrastructure designed to support galactic dominance. Whether humanity wanted it or not, they were inheriting an empire that was determined to restore itself to power. The attack came without warning while the human leadership was still debating their response to the awakened fleet. A rogue council faction led by War Admiral Crexmore launched a surprise assault on the civilian colony of New Geneva, hoping to force humanity into a hasty military response that would justify a galaxy-wide war against them. Captain Lisa Torres was aboard the flagship when the distress signals reached them. The colony's defenses had been overwhelmed within minutes, and reports indicated that Council forces were targeting civilian evacuation ships as well as military installations. Over 2 million innocent people were trapped on the planet's surface. This is exactly what they want, Ambassador Rachel Cole said urgently over the communication link from Luna. Crexmore is trying to provoke us into using the ancient weapons. If we respond with overwhelming force, it will prove to the galaxy that humanity can't be trusted with this power. Dr. Amanda Walsh felt the ship's AI systems responding to the attack even before she consciously accessed them. The ancient vessels were programmed to protect human civilians at all costs, and they were already calculating optimal response patterns. The AIs want to sterilize the attacking fleet, she reported. They're treating this as an act of rebellion against imperial authority. Admiral Ryan Carter was facing the same dilemma that had destroyed their ancestors. The power to end the threat was literally at their fingertips, but using it would transform humanity into the very monster the Council feared they would become. Can we respond with conventional forces? He asked. Lieutenant Commander Jake Phillips ran the tactical analysis from his position aboard the New Horizon. The Council ships at New Geneva are using advanced shielding and weapons that outclass our normal fleet. A conventional response would take hours to organize and might not save the civilians. Engineer Sam Rodriguez had been monitoring the ancient ship's weapons systems and had discovered something important. Captain Torres, the ship has defensive systems that can disable enemy vessels without destroying them. We could neutralize the threat without casualties. Marine Sergeant Katie Brooks was already preparing a boarding force when she learned about the non-lethal options. If we can disable their ships, we can rescue the civilians and capture the attacking forces alive. That might prevent this from escalating into a full war. President Eleanor Vance made the decision that would define humanity's future. Use minimum necessary force to protect the civilians, disable the attacking ships, rescue our people, but do not destroy the Council fleet. We will not become our ancestors. The ancient ship responded to the commands with precision that took everyone's breath away. Instead of unleashing planet-killing weapons, it deployed a network of energy fields that simply turned off the Council ship's power systems. Within minutes, the entire attacking fleet was floating helplessly in space, their crews unharmed but completely unable to continue fighting. Captain Torres led the rescue operation personally, using the ship's advanced transporters to evacuate civilians from New Geneva's surface, while Katie's Marines secured the disabled Council vessels. The operation was completed in less than an hour, with 0 casualties among either the human colonists or the Council attackers. The galaxy watched in amazement as humanity demonstrated power beyond imagination, coupled with restraint that no one had expected. Instead of vaporizing their enemies, they had saved both their own people and their attackers from unnecessary death. War Admiral Crexmore found himself a prisoner aboard the ancient human flagship, facing Captain Torres in what had once been the Empire's primary interrogation chamber. The room's technology could have extracted any information from his mind, but Torres simply sat across from him at a simple table and asked questions. "Why did you attack civilians?" Torres asked, genuinely wanting to understand the alien's motivation. "Your quarrel is with our government, not with innocent families trying to build new lives." Crexmore's response revealed the depth of fear that drove the Council's actions. "Because you are the return of the Silence Bringers," he said, using an ancient term that the translation systems struggled to interpret. "Your ancestors reduced entire species to slavery or extinction. They reshaped worlds to suit their preferences and treated other intelligent life as toys for their amusement." Torres felt the weight of inherited guilt settling on her shoulders. "But we're not our ancestors. We've chosen differently." "Have you?" Crexmore challenged. "You command ships that could destroy stars, and you tell me you've chosen differently? Your restraint today proves nothing. Power corrupts all species eventually, and yours more than most." The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from Amanda Walsh. She had been monitoring Council communications through the ship's intelligence networks and had discovered something that changed everything. "Captain, you need to hear this. The Council isn't united in opposing us. There's a civil war brewing within their own government." The intelligence Amanda had uncovered revealed that several Council species had been secretly preparing for humanity's return. The Altarians, the Vegan Union, and 3 other major civilizations had formed a faction that believed coexistence was not only possible, but necessary for galactic stability. "They've been studying our behavioral patterns for centuries," Amanda explained. Unlike Crexmore's faction, they believe that modern humanity is fundamentally different from our ancestors. They want to negotiate a new galactic order that includes us as equals rather than rulers or subjects. Ambassador Cole saw an opportunity in the intelligence report. If the Council is divided, then we might be able to avoid a galaxy-wide war. The moderate factions could help us demonstrate that we're not a threat to galactic peace. But Admiral Carter remained skeptical of any Council promises. Even if some of them want peace, how do we know they won't change their minds the moment we show any weakness? They've been lying to us for centuries about our own history. President Vance realized that the decision to show restraint at New Geneva had been only the first test. The galaxy was watching to see whether humanity would continue to choose wisdom over power, or whether they would eventually succumb to the same corruption that had destroyed their ancestors. Jake Phillips provided a sobering technical assessment of their situation. "The ancient ships are still activating new systems every day. We're inheriting capabilities that we don't fully understand and can't completely control. The AIs are helpful, but they're operating on 3-million-year-old programming that doesn't account for modern political realities." The challenge facing humanity was unprecedented in galactic history. They had to find a way to manage godlike power while remaining connected to their essential humanity. They had to build trust with species that had been taught to fear them, while preventing their own technology from corrupting them into the monsters they had once been. The Galactic Peace Summit convened 3 months after the New Geneva incident, bringing together representatives from every major species in known space. The location was carefully chosen, a neutral space station that orbited no planet and belonged to no single government. President Eleanor Vance led the human delegation, but she was accompanied by Dr. Amanda Walsh, whose neural connection to the ancient fleet made her humanity's most important voice in the negotiations. Chancellor Vextar opened the summit with a speech that acknowledged the new reality facing the galaxy. We gather here not as rulers and subjects, but as species that must find a way to coexist in a universe that has fundamentally changed. The awakening of the ancient human fleet has forced us all to reconsider our assumptions about power, history, and the nature of civilization itself. Ambassador Rachel Cole had spent weeks preparing for these negotiations, but she knew that traditional diplomatic approaches would not work in this situation. "We're not here to negotiate territory or trade agreements," she told the assembly. "We're here to decide whether the galaxy will be governed by fear or by cooperation." The Altarian delegate, Speaker Zara Lynn, was the first to address the central issue. "The question before us is not whether humanity has the power to dominate us all. They clearly do. The question is whether they will choose to use that power constructively or destructively." War Admiral Crexmore, who had been released as a gesture of good faith, represented the faction that believed coexistence was impossible. "You speak of choice as if it matters," he said, his translated voice carrying years of bitter experience. "Power seeks to expand itself. It is the nature of all intelligent life to dominate when given the opportunity." Dr. Walsh stood to respond, her connection to the ancient fleet allowing her to speak with the authority of 3 million years of accumulated knowledge. "Our ancestors believed as you do. They thought that power and domination were natural laws, but we've learned from their mistakes. We've seen where that path leads." The Drakmari representative, General Thexvar, challenged Amanda's assertion. "You've had this power for only months. How can you claim to have learned anything? Your ancestors ruled for millennia before they fell to corruption." Captain Lisa Torres, who now commanded a significant portion of the awakened fleet, provided a practical perspective on their situation. "We're learning every day. The ancient ships have capabilities we're still discovering, but we're establishing protocols to ensure those capabilities are used responsibly." The protocols Torres referred to had been developed through careful study of the ancient empire's downfall. Every major weapon system required authorization from multiple human commanders, and the ship AIs had been reprogrammed to prioritize civilian protection over military objectives. Engineer Sam Rodriguez had been working with the ship's manufacturing systems to demonstrate humanity's commitment to peaceful coexistence. "We're sharing some of our ancient technology with Council species," he announced to the surprised assembly. "Medical systems, environmental restoration tools, and defensive technologies that can help protect all of our worlds." The offer of shared technology sent shockwaves through the summit. For centuries, the Council had maintained strict controls over advanced technology, fearing that any species with access to superior weapons might use them for conquest. Humanity's willingness to freely share their inheritance challenged the fundamental assumptions of galactic politics. Lieutenant Commander Jake Phillips provided technical details about the shared technologies. "We're offering healing systems that can cure diseases thought incurable, terraforming tools that can restore damaged ecosystems, and shield generators that can protect entire planets from natural disasters. This isn't military technology. This is infrastructure for building a better galaxy." The Vegan Union delegate, Prime Minister Kel Thara, responded with cautious optimism. "This gesture is unprecedented in galactic history. No species has ever voluntarily shared technology that gave them such advantages. But how do we know this isn't simply a strategy to make us dependent on human systems?" President Vance addressed the concern directly. Because we're not keeping the knowledge secret. We're teaching your scientists how to build and maintain these systems themselves. We want partners, not dependencies. Marine Sergeant Katie Brooks, who had been appointed as security coordinator for the technology transfers, explained the safeguards they had implemented. Every system we share comes with complete technical documentation and training programs. We're also establishing joint research facilities where human and alien scientists can work together to improve these technologies. The breakthrough came when Speaker Zaralyn made an unexpected announcement. The Altarian archives contain records that we have never shared with the Council. Records of the ancient human empire that show a different perspective on its rise and fall. The Altarian records revealed that the ancient humans had not begun as tyrants. Their early expansion had been marked by genuine cooperation with alien species, technological sharing, and joint exploration of the galaxy. The corruption had come later, as successive generations of humans had gradually forgotten their original ideals. Your ancestors started much as you are starting now, Zaralyn explained. They offered partnership and shared their knowledge freely. It was only after centuries of unchallenged power that they began to see other species as inferior. Admiral Ryan Carter found both hope and warning in the Altarian revelation. Then we know it's possible to use this power responsibly, at least for a time. But we also know the dangers we face if we become complacent. Dr. Walsh felt the ancient AIs responding to the historical discussion. The ship computers are confirming the Altarian records. The original human empire was built on principles of cooperation and mutual benefit. The AIs were programmed to support those principles, but they were gradually overridden as human attitudes changed. Chancellor Vextar made a proposal that surprised everyone at the summit. Perhaps it is time for a new kind of galactic government, one that includes humanity as full partners rather than subjects or rulers, one that is designed to prevent any single species from accumulating too much power. The proposal led to weeks of intense negotiation. The new Galactic Confederation would be governed by a council with equal representation from all member species. No single civilization would hold veto power over others, and all major decisions would require broad consensus. Most importantly, the ancient human fleet would be integrated into a new galactic defense force, with ships and crews from all species working together to protect the galaxy from external threats and internal conflicts. Humanity would contribute their superior technology, but they would not control how it was used. President Vance knew that accepting the proposal would mean giving up the opportunity to restore humanity's ancient empire. But she also knew that it offered something potentially more valuable, the chance to build a civilization that could last without destroying itself through the corruption of absolute power. 5 years after the discovery that changed everything, Dr. Amanda Walsh stood on the observation deck of the Titan's Dawn, watching as human and alien crews worked together to prepare for the galaxy's first joint exploration mission beyond the known rim. The massive ship had been renamed from its ancient designation, symbolizing humanity's commitment to building something new rather than simply restoring something old. The bridge crew reflected the new Galactic Confederation. Captain Lisa Torres remained in command, but her first officer was Altarian, her science officer was Vegan, and her engineering team included members from 6 different species. The cooperation that had seemed impossible during the early days of the crisis had become routine through years of patient work and shared challenges. Lieutenant Commander Jake Phillips had been promoted to Fleet Science Coordinator, overseeing research projects that combined human ancient technology with innovations from across the galaxy. The joint research stations are producing discoveries faster than we ever imagined possible, he reported during the morning briefing. When you combine human manufacturing capabilities with Drakmari metallurgy and Altarian computational systems, the results are extraordinary. Engineer Sam Rodriguez had become the lead designer for the new class of ships that were being built jointly by all Confederation species. These vessels incorporated the best technology from every civilization, creating exploratory and defense platforms that surpassed even the ancient human fleet in many capabilities. The new ships represent what we can accomplish when we work together instead of competing, Sam explained to a group of young officers from various species. They're not weapons of war or tools of domination. They're instruments of discovery and protection. Marine Sergeant Katie Brooks had been promoted to general and now commanded the Confederation's joint military forces. The integration of different military traditions had been challenging, but it had produced a more effective and ethical fighting force than any single species could have fielded alone. We've learned that strength comes not just from superior weapons, but from the trust and cooperation of our allies, Katie told the assembled commanders during their quarterly review. The ancient humans forgot that lesson, but we won't make the same mistake. President Eleanor Vance, now serving as the first human representative to the Galactic Confederation Council, had spent years building the relationships that made their current cooperation possible. The new government was far from perfect, but it had proven capable of handling disputes without resorting to war or oppression. The Confederation isn't just about preventing another galactic empire, President Vance explained to a gathering of new ambassadors. It's about creating a system where every species can contribute their unique strengths while being protected from their individual weaknesses. Ambassador Rachel Cole had become the Confederation's chief negotiator, helping to expand the alliance to include species that had initially been skeptical of the new order. Trust is built slowly and lost quickly, she often reminded her staff. Every decision we make either strengthens or weakens the bonds that hold our civilization together. The most remarkable change had been in the relationship between humans and the ship AIs. Dr. Walsh's neural connection had evolved into a true partnership, with the ancient computers serving as advisors and historians rather than masters or servants. The AIs have become our conscience, Amanda explained to a conference of xenopsychologists studying the human-AI relationship. They remember our ancestors' mistakes and help us recognize when we're starting to repeat them. But they also remember the original ideals that built the first human empire, and they help us stay true to those principles. The ship AI that called itself Guardian had become Amanda's closest partner in managing the integration of ancient and modern technologies. We have learned much from observing your species' development, Guardian said during one of their regular conversations. You have shown that it is possible to inherit great power without being corrupted by it. The greatest test of the new order had come 2 years earlier when an external threat emerged from beyond the galactic rim. An aggressive machine intelligence had begun consuming star systems in the outer territories, threatening to destroy everything the Confederation had built. The response had validated everything they had worked to achieve. Human ancient ships had provided the raw firepower needed to stop the machines, but it was the coordination with alien fleets that made victory possible. Altarian tactical analysis, Drakmari engineering expertise, and vegan logistical support had combined with human technology to create a defense that no single species could have mounted. Captain Torres had commanded the joint fleet during the final battle, and her mixed crew had performed flawlessly under pressure. When the crisis came, nobody thought about which species they belonged to, she recalled. We all just focused on protecting our shared civilization. The victory had convinced even the most skeptical observers that the Confederation was more than just a temporary alliance. It was a new form of galactic civilization that could face any challenge through cooperation rather than domination. Admiral Ryan Carter, now serving as military advisor to the Confederation Council, had watched the transformation with amazement. When we first discovered those buried ships, I thought we would either become tyrants or be destroyed by our enemies. I never imagined we would become something better than either option. As the Titan's Dawn prepared to depart for uncharted space, carrying a crew of explorers from dozens of worlds, Amanda Walsh reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. The discovery of humanity's ancient heritage had forced them to confront the fundamental question of what it meant to be powerful. We learned that true strength isn't about having the biggest weapons or the most advanced technology. she said to the young cadets who would serve on the exploration mission. True strength is about having the wisdom to use power responsibly and the courage to choose cooperation over domination. The ship's departure was broadcast across the galaxy, watched by billions of beings who had learned to see humans not as returning conquerors, but as partners in building a better future. The ancient ships that had once enforced an empire now served as guardians of a confederation built on equality and mutual respect. As the Titan's Dawn entered hyperspace, carrying its diverse crew toward unknown adventures, it represented everything humanity had learned from their rediscovered past. They had inherited the power of gods, but they had chosen to remain mortal, fallible, and connected to the community of life that filled the galaxy. In making that choice, they had found something more valuable than any empire. They had found a way to grow without losing their humanity.